First of all, I just want to thank everybody for joining the user group here today. And big thanks to Frank for letting us sponsor it. The first session that we have will be our sponsor session, which will be a live demo just showing you how our product, PatchMyPC, can work to help you both package third-party applications as well as integrate third-party patching into both ConfigMgr and Intune. In addition to that, we then have Cody and Jordan, engineers from our team, that will be doing just a deep dive into WSUS and tips and tricks to maintain that, and just a concept just all around WSUS and updates. So with that said, I'm going to be presenting the PatchMyPC product, showing you how it works, and I'll just jump right into the demo. So first thing is, if this does look interesting to you and you wanted to try out our product, you can request a free trial over on our website. And that will give you access to everything that we offer, all features and all products within our catalog. In addition to that, before we get started, we do have some engineers from our team monitoring the chat for any questions. Since we're also on a team meeting, if you do want to come off on mute and just ask something as I'm going through the demo, that would be perfectly fine as well. So first thing I'm going to do, if you're trying out our product for the first time, we can go over to our download and docs page at docs.patchmypc.com. This is where we can grab our latest installer file. And we do also have step-by-step docs, both for our Configuration Manager product as well as our product that integrates into Microsoft Intune. And if you wanted to, you could do a live demo as well, which will be very similar to what we're doing in this session. Maybe somebody from your team didn't catch it. You could schedule a live demo, which would be a one-on-one with an engineer from our team, plus people from your team. In addition to the live demo, you can also do a free guided install, which would be basically just scheduling a time with an engineer from our team. And we can actually kind of reverse the live demo where you're setting up a trial, for example, in your environment, and you actually have an engineer walking you through all the steps that we'll kind of be demoing here today. So a lot of options to make sure that you get off and get started well. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our installer. So from a prerequisite perspective and kind of where we're installing this, if you're using our product with ConfigMgr and you want to integrate third-party patching, the publisher utility that we're downloading here, this would get installed on your top-level software update point within your Configuration Manager environment. So in the demo that we're in today, we have a relatively simple ConfigMan site. We have a single site server, and every single site system role is running on that, including our software update point. In the event that you did have a remote software update point that was the top level sub that synced with Microsoft, you would just ensure that you install this publisher utility on that server. So it's only about 7 megabytes, so we'll just go through the typical MSI install, which is just next, next, next. If you are using Intune only and you don't have ConfigMgr, you can enable the checkbox for Intune standalone mode, which will disable some of the prerequisite checks that we have for WSUS for third-party updates. All right, cool. So once that's installed, I'll go ahead and launch that. Now, the main areas that we offer with our product is third-party patching as well as third-party application packaging. So from like kind of the tool perspective, this is going to be the tool that will automate both the publishing and packaging of apps as well as the publishing of third-party updates to WSUS, which would then sync into ConfigMgr. So the only real prerequisite that we have, this is actually a Microsoft requirement, is if you are doing third-party updates, you do need to have a code signing certificate, and that's going to allow your clients to ensure that the updates that are being published are coming from a trusted source. So there's a few ways that you can do this. In ConfigMgr 1806 current branch or newer, there's an option within the software update point components where you can allow ConfigMgr to automatically generate a signing certificate that's going to be used to publish your third-party updates to WSUS. This will allow you to not have to worry about things like a PKI certificate, but that is an option as well if you did use the certificate authority and you wanted to generate your signing cert from PKI. Our tool has the ability to import that as well. But what we find is most customers are generally just coming into their software update point under the third-party updates tab, and then they choose the option for ConfigMgr to manage the cert. So what will happen when I enable that setting? The next time that your software update point runs a synchronization, if you don't already have a third-party certificate for code signing for WSUS, it's going to actually generate one for us. So I'm just going to go into all software updates and trigger a software update point sync. And then what I'm going to do is check the WSync Manager log. What we're going to notice here is since the certificate is not already in place, it's going to generate one. So we'll be able to see that taking place here, where it said that it inserted and created our new signing certificate. So what's going to happen at this point is all the prerequisites should be pretty much completed. Now, one thing to note, if you're already using third-party updates, maybe you have driver catalogs, for instance, or maybe a different vendor that does third-party patching, our publishing utility would automatically detect that, and you could just keep using the existing certificate that's already in your environment. But now that I run that synchronization, if I come back in my software update point, I'll be able to see that ConfigMgr automatically generated the code signing certificate that's going to be used for my third-party patches. We can see the thumbprint ends in 7D89. So if I click OK out of that, all I have to do is come back to the publisher, and if we click on Show Certificate, it's going to recheck for the cert. And we can see that we're just going to reuse and make use of that 7D89 thumbprint certificate that Configuration Manager is using for us. So that's really the only thing to get started and start publishing our updates that you would really have to do external to our tool, is just make sure that cert is in place. The only other setting with regards to deploying that certificate to clients, if you go to your client settings, there is one additional setting that you want to apply under software updates. You would just want to ensure that the option to enable third-party software updates is set to yes. And if this is set to yes, as long as that certificate was created, it's going to automatically deploy that certificate to your ConfigMan clients using client policy. So you don't have to worry about setting things like a GPO up. You can handle this all directly through your ConfigMgr client. Go. Cool. So with regards to actually kind of using our tool, there's two core areas. We have our updates and our apps. So if we kind of look at what this corresponds to in Configuration Manager, we'll see that, let's come back over here. We have basically our Updates tab, and then we have our ConfigMan Apps tab. So the Updates tab, this is going to allow us to publish third-party updates into the Software Updates feature of Configuration Manager. And then you can use things like software update groups, deployment packages to actually go out and deploy that. We then have the actual applications, and what that's going to do is that will package applications for you and automatically have them populate into your applications node within Config Manager. So that could be used for machines that don't already have the app. You could use task sequences or collection deployments to go ahead and deploy those so you don't have to manually package that. And then the updates would come into play for those machines. Once that app gets installed, you can ensure that it's staying patched with those third-party updates using the updates feature. So we cover both the new app deployment as well as the updating, all using native Config Manager features. Okay. So what I'm going to do for the demo, we're going to enable a couple of products for the updates as well as the applications and show you what that looks like. And then we'll also kind of jump in and I'll show you what the Intune functionality looks like if you're using cloud. Or if you're using co-management, both Intune and Config Manager, we'll go through both of those options. So to get started, we do have a pretty large list of products. So in our supported products page, you'll be able to see kind of all the products that we have. And one important thing to note out, let's say that you have a product within your environment and maybe we don't support it today in our list. If you click on Request a New Product in that supported products page, that will take you out to ideas.patchmypc.com. which is our user voice where you can submit new application feedback. So maybe there's a new feature or a new application that you would like to see added. You would be able to go and submit that or upvote an existing one. And then if we did ship one out, you would get notified via email when that took place. Now, in addition to this, you can also check out our public roadmap from the top of here as well. And that will actually show you all the features and products that we've shipped recently. So for example, I can see in the month of August, if I scroll down, we added 4 new products that month to the catalog. If I look a couple months back, we added about 10 to 12 products the month before as well. So you'll be able to see the innovation that we're providing based on that customer feedback directly from that ideas portal that our customers are asking for. And you can see all that progress and work with us directly through our roadmap. Now, for this example, we do also have a feature. If you click this database scan icon, we have a feature where you can automatically scan your ConfigMgr database, and it will tell you, based on the existing inventory that you have via hardware inventory being collected automatically on clients, which one of the products that we support are already in your environment. So all you have to do is put in your SQL Server for ConfigMgr in the database, and when you click query, we're going to go out and kind of query the add and remove programs for all your machines. And we'll say, hey, based on all these devices you already have, here's the products that we actually support in our catalog today that already exist in your environment. So even before you start publishing or making updates or apps available, you can have a good idea of the coverage that you're going to get through our product. So from here, you could say, I want to select everything that I detected, and you could enable them all in a single click. Now, for demonstration purposes, I won't do that because that would take a while for them to all publish. But one additional feature that we have in this scan is we do have an option where, let's say that there's a product that we've released in the future. We have this feature where we can automatically query your database at each synchronization, which by default would be every day. And let's say that there's a product that's installed on at least one machine. That would allow it to automatically be enabled. So let's say that we release a new product that was requested by a customer. And let's say that you had it published. If it's on 5 machines or more, we would automatically enable that to publish as an update in an application into ConfigMgr. The useful benefit there is you wouldn't even have to come back into our tool. We would just automatically enable things based on the criteria you define for any new features and products that come out in the future as well. So that can be quite beneficial because really after you set up this publisher tool for the first time, it's really going to be fully automated going forward, and you would use all the default options in ConfigMan like your software update groups and or applications deployments and task sequences to deploy the apps and updates. Okay. One final thing before we actually start publishing some updates, we do have a feature where you can scan a CVE list. So if I click this database icon, I've got a CVE file. It's just an Excel sheet, and it contains a list of different CVEs from a vulnerability scanner that we had. So we can see just a lot of these different CVE IDs. We have the ability in this tool where we can go and select that and click process. What this will do is it will automatically scan and detect CVEs within that file and will tell you if there's any third-party patches that are either available in our catalog online, or if they're already published to WSUS, we'll tell you, hey, we detected based on that list, this is a vulnerability for Google Chrome, and this is the version that fixes it. Now, one other thing to note, if we don't know about a CVE, we will tell you, hey, this is unknown. We weren't able to detect this either in our catalog or for a third-party update that's been published. You may need to patch this some other method, for example. Okay. So what I'm going to do before I actually enable some products, I want to go over some of the custom options that we offer. So if I were to right-click on the All Products level, I can apply these settings globally. I can also apply the custom options at the vendor level. So maybe we wanted to apply it to Adobe products. And then I can even apply it at a specific product level. So what I'm going to do first is click on All Products. I'm going to say I want to globally enable a couple of these customizations. So for example, let's say I want to delete shortcuts for any product that I have. I could right-click and do that in a single click. Let's say that you want to turn off the self-update feature for a product. We could do that globally as well. And then the last option that we have that can globally apply for all products that support these options is the installation logging. So the installation logging feature can be quite helpful because this allows you to automatically add the installation logging command line to both MSIs and EXEs, which can be beneficial if you ever have any updates or applications that are failing to install. Rather than getting a generic 1603 exit code, you could actually have the vendor's log where you could understand why it failed. So could it not update a registry key? Could it not update a file? So you can get detailed logging for troubleshooting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy just a UNC path. And it's just a share that I have on the network. And the last option that we have in this wizard is we could say, let's say that a installation fails. We could say for any update or app that tries to install that gets a non-zero exit code, let's automatically copy that vendor's install log from the client running the install to like a central location, for example. So this could be a good way, maybe the help desk to troubleshoot any updates that we detect are failing with a non-zero exit code. So these are the three settings we're enable at all products. What I'm going to do next is enable a update for Chrome. So we do have a device that has an outdated version of Google Chrome 64-bit. Now, if I right-click on Chrome, there's three additional options that apply at the specific product level. So we could do a custom pre or post script. We could add custom command lines to the product. Or if it's an MSI-based installer, we could add an MST transform to customize the way that update or app install would function. So what I'm going to do for Chrome specifically is I'm going to go to the pre and post script, and I'm going to say anytime an update for Chrome applies, I want to apply a post-update script that's going to set the home page for Google Chrome. So if I look at this, it's just a PowerShell script. And all we're really doing here is setting a registry value under the Chrome homepage location item that's going to set the homepage for all users to patchmypc.com. So this is just an example of if you did really have something specific to your company's environment that you wanted to apply to customize the way an application would work post-update, you could really get as flexible as you want. So we offer, PowerShell scripts. You could do a batch file, a VB script. You could even have an exe or an MSI apply as a pre or post action as well. So we'll go ahead and choose this and click OK. So now anytime Chrome updates, it will ensure the home page is always what you want it to be. And then the last update that we're going to apply is Notepad++ 64-bit. So for Notepad, we're going to right click and we have this option where we can manage what to do if the end user has an application open when an update is trying to be applied through Configuration Manager. So this is just to manage conflicting processes. And this feature can be quite helpful. There's a couple of options that we can apply within it. So we could say if the application is running and it's open, the default behavior is we're just going to try the installation anyways. Most products will work just fine in this scenario. It just might require a pending restart if a file is in use, and then you would just have your normal reboot prompt through Software Center. We could also choose to automatically close the application. So that would not notify the end user. It would just automatically close it. We could choose to skip the update if the app is in use. Or one of the newer features that we're going to look at today is we could actually send the end user a notification if they have the app open and an update needs to be applied. Now, this isn't really necessary for most products. It would only be ones where may have issues if they're open. If you click this documentation link on this window as well, we actually do document some of the products that we're aware of if they're open and in use by an end user that will actually cause the update to fail and not apply successfully. So as an example, Notepad++, which we'll be applying to this, is one that we know if the end user has it open, it will actually fail the update and give you a bad exit code. So what we're going to do for this, we're going to say, let's notify the end user that they need to close the app. Let's give them the ability to snooze that notification up to 3 times. So maybe they're, coding in Notepad and they don't want to close it right away. They would be able to snooze that. In addition to that, we also have an option where you can do custom branding. So let's say that you wanted to say your organization name. For this example, we'll say Patch My PC. We'll say this requires your org to close this app. So by default, if we said that, we can preview it on the server that we're running on just to give you an idea of what that pop-up would look like for your end user. Now, if you wanted to, we could even do custom branding. So if we click on Set a Custom Banner, maybe you have like a logo that you want to include to just improve the trust that your end user knows, hey, this is coming from my company for sure. So just as an example, if I look on my Documents folder, we do have kind of a fun GIF file for Dunder Mifflin. If I click on that, you can just get an idea of, hey, you could apply a custom PNG or a custom GIF file if you wanted to have custom branding specific to your organization so that your end users know that this pop-up is in fact coming from you. So I'll go ahead and just choose that prompt and then we'll do OK. So now what's going to happen that this setting is enabled, if an end user has Notepad++ open and an update is being installed, it's going to prompt them and say, hey, we need to close this because we need to update. So that's the two that I'm going to enable as an update. So once I start my synchronization, these two are going to automatically publish into WSUS and then sync over to ConfigMgr as an update, which could be used to update all your existing machines. What I'm going to do next is actually enable an application. So if I go over to my applications, there's only a few options that we really need to apply. The first one is, where do we want to download the application content for any products that you enable? So I've just specified a UNC path, and this is where any applications created from our tool is going to store the source files like the MSIs or the exe installers for the products that you turn on. There's a few options that are just kind of specific to applications in general. So for example, do you want it to be run from a task sequence? This would automatically check the box in the properties of the application, which would be native to ConfigMan. One of the more useful ones that some of our customers enable, let's say that you use custom folders for organization for your apps. In the options, we could say, let's apply all PatchMyPC applications, and let's move them to the PatchMyPC folder right away when they get created, for example. So I'll apply that setting. And then there's a few other additional ones. So you really want to control like what happens when a new update comes out for an application. So the default behavior is, let's say that Google Chrome version 89 came out and then version 90 came out the next day. What would you want to happen to that previous version, that previous application for 89? If you leave the default behavior, what we do is we update the existing application in place. So we would download the latest binary for Google Chrome 90, the MSI. We would modify the deployment type to point to that new content folder, and then we would update all the metadata and detection methods for that deployment type to point to version 90. The benefit here is, let's say that you have the original application in a task sequence deploying version 89. Once version 90 gets auto-created and it just uses the existing app, you could always ensure that new devices coming in your environment using the task sequence for that app are always getting the most secure, up-to-date version of Chrome. Now, if you do require some change control and you're not okay with applications updating right away, there's a second option where you could say, let's create a brand new application for each new version that's available for Chrome automatically. The benefit to that is you do get a little more change control over when you actually want to deploy that rather than it updating the existing deployments. But then the downside is that you would have to go reassociate the application in your task sequence or redeploy the new application for version 90. So just benefits to each way, just depends on your organization and what they prefer. The last option is you could choose to only retain a specific number of old versions of an application. So this would help make sure that if something happened, we would retain the older version as well, so you could always roll back to a previous build. And then the final option is we automatically distribute it to your DPs. So that's really all there is to it. Same concepts apply for the custom right-click options. So for the applications, we could say, let's delete shortcuts, let's turn off self-updaters, let's enable logging, and we could just do this at the global level for those ones that we want to. Now, one thing that you'll notice is for the apps, there are some additional options that are not available for updates that are really just corresponding to application features. So for example, we could say, let's set custom categories. This probably wouldn't make sense to do at the all products level because it's going to be probably an app by app basis if you did categories for ConfigMgr. So this would be, for example, what would show up both for the admin categories of your applications in the console, as well as the user categories, which would show up in Software Center. You can control that all via right click. You could also manage security scope. So maybe only certain admins should only be able to see applications generated from us. You could say, maybe I don't want it to go in the default scope, but I want to go to a different department scope, for example. And then lastly, as from a right-click perspective, you can control a few other things from the all products level. All right. So for this, what I'm going to do for an actual base application, I'm going to enable the 7-zip application for a new install. So let me go ahead and right click that. And then, once we get to the product, you even have more customizations that you can optionally apply. So let's say, for example, I wanted to have 7-zip go to its own subfolder. So we had Patch My PC at the global level, but maybe 7-zip, I want to say I want to go directly into this subfolder to keep that organized. You could apply that directly at the right-click option for 7-zip. So just a lot of different options that you can configure depending on what you need. We'll also make it a featured application for Software Center so it shows up first. And let me go ahead and apply this. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and start a synchronization so that we can get these updates downloading and publishing in the background just so we can see this all happen in the demo. But what would typically happen is this would just automatically sync by default every night at 7 p.m. So let's say that there's a new update that we release on our end for any of the products you enable. They're going to automatically publish into your environment based on your sync schedule, and that's just going to automatically show up. Another feature that we have is if we detect that there are new updates published to WSUS, we can automatically trigger your software update point to synchronize so that you can see those updates showing up right away. And then the only other real option that I have to cover would be the alerting. So the alerting feature can be quite helpful because when new third-party updates are being published real time, you can choose whether or not you want to send email notifications to your staff, or you can even post to a Microsoft Teams or a Slack webhook to get notifications when things are happening real time. So what we'll notice here in a few seconds, once this update's published, we'll see a notification get sent to one of my Teams channels letting us know that the update for Chrome was published real time. Yeah. Once again, any questions that come up, feel free to use the chat or come off unmute. I see that we had one about education pricing, which it looks like Wes has answered in the chat. Now, from a release cadence, we do release updates probably 4 to 5 times per week. So for example, if I look at yesterday, we do have an RSS feed that will show you all the updates that we've released for any catalog that we do. So for example, yesterday we had an update for Thunderbird. We can see it was a security update. And we do also scan every binary through VirusTotal, and then we post those results out. So we could see, for example, results for Thunderbird. We could see for Node.js. And that will be available for every single catalog update that we do. You'll be able to see that data. So if I look at Microsoft Teams, it looks like I do have some data going on here. So we can see that an update for Chrome was just published just 1 minute ago. And we can also, within that webhook that we enabled, we can get details about that specific update. So we can go out to the vendor's release notes. We could see that it was a critical severity and it was a security update. If it did have any CVEs, we can also directly click and go to the vulnerability database, where you'll be able to see information about that specific vulnerability for the update that was published into your environment real time. We can also see that our 7-zip application was created. And that looks good. So that's just kind of how those alerts will work if you wanted to stay up to date with that. So if I come back over to Configuration Manager, at this point, we've kind of enabled the products and everything going forward would be totally automated. So if I come back and look at all software updates, I can see that Chrome update and that Notepad update are already showing up in my console because I did have that option to automatically sync my software update point. So we can see both of these are showing up. And at this point, they're really no different than a Microsoft update. So we could come in and we could add criteria. We could say, let's take a look at all Patch My PC updates. From here, depending on how you create your update groups each month, we could come in from a search and create our group. But in our lab environment here, we've actually got an automatic deployment rule that we already had set up. So just for an example, if I look at my ADR, I can see this is automatically deploying any non-superseded updates that are third party. So if I click on preview on this, we should see that Chrome and Notepad update showing up on this list. And if I look at my deployment settings, we have all the same options that we would have for Microsoft and ADRs as well. So we've got 3 different deployments automatically going out. We have 2 pilots, and then we have our production deployment, all with different deadlines. So 1, 2, and 7 days. If I look at my actual deployment, we're going to be able to choose all your existing options like your collections, your deadlines, whether or not your users can see the updates in Software Center, and then things like reboots and or maintenance windows. These are all configurable and will work the exact same way that Microsoft updates would be deployed. Cool. So when that kicked off, it automatically downloaded our content into an ADR or a deployment package that automatically went out to my distribution points, and we automatically had our deployment created along with those 3 different deployments. So that's kind of what it would look like from the synchronization that happens from our publisher, and then how that would flow into ConfigMan. Now, if I go over to my applications, I can also see that application for 7-Zip is showing up here as well. So if I look on the properties of that app that we created, we can also see things like the title for the app, automatically created. We can see the documentation, the description, the different keywords are just automatically filled out, as well as the icon. And then we can see we automatically check the box to make it featured based on that right-click option. If I look at my deployment type, we'll be able to go out and kind of look at where the content is for this app. So it put it in that folder that we created for our package source file. Cool. Awesome. So what I'm going to do is deploy the application to my all users collection. So by default, when these apps get created, they're not going to be deployed. So I'm just running a PowerShell script that's going to deploy it as available to all users, just so that we can see what this looks like in Software Center. So if I refresh, I can now see I've deployed that as available, and we'll see what that looks like in Software Center. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump over to my client that's part of this ConfigMan environment. So if I look at my Updates tab, I can see that this machine is part of my pilot group. So that means the deadline is set for tomorrow, since we made that 1 day from now. And since I made it available for the end user to see in Software Center, we do have the ability where we could start the installation for these updates ahead of the deadline. So if I take a quick look, I can see that I have Google Chrome. I can see that I have version 77 currently installed. And for this demo, we have 88 available. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and look at Chrome. And let me just open up Google Chrome. So I can see that I do not currently have any custom homepage. We're just going to google.com. And I can also see that I have the Google Chrome icon on the public desktop. So those 2 right-click options that we enabled, where we said we want to delete the shortcut, and we also wanted to set the home page, we'll take note of that when we apply the Chrome update. So I'm going to go ahead and start that installation. And if you also remember, we enabled the logging option via right-click as well. So what we're going to see is a new folder get created in CCM logs, and that's where the actual verbose log of Chrome's MSI is going to get placed on this client. So we should hopefully see that kick in. So here's the folder that we automatically created, and here's the actual verbose logging of the MSI. Now, in the event that, let's say that this failed for some reason, that's when we would also copy this log to that UNC folder if you enabled that option. So we could have all the failed logs in a single location. Now, in addition to the vendor's log, we do also have a Patch My PC log that will monitor both the installation as well as any custom actions that you applied for that. So for example, we can see that Chrome just got installed. In our log file, which also uses CMTrace formatting, we can see it took 29 seconds to run the Google Chrome MSI. We can also see that we deleted the public shortcut desktop after the install completed. We set 3 different registry values to disable updates based on that right click that we applied. So we set the 3 different updates in the Google Chrome policy key to turn off self-updates. And then lastly, we went ahead and run that custom PowerShell script that set the Google Chrome homepage. So if I come back to my desktop, I can see the shortcut automatically got deleted. But if I were to launch Chrome, we'll see that the PowerShell script set the home page for all my users to patchmypc.com. So that's where you can get very customizable based on the needs that you have within your environment. Okay. And we can now see that Google Chrome is up to date. If I were to refresh, add, and remove programs, we're going to go from 77 to version 88 here as well. Now, if I come back for Notepad, what we'll notice is I currently have Notepad++ open in the background. I'm going to go ahead and kick that off, and what we should hopefully see is we're going to get the dialog saying, hey, your company needs Notepad closed because there's an update. And this is because I applied that right click because I knew that if I didn't close Notepad for this specific product, the update would actually fail. So they could either click close and update directly here, or they could snooze the update up to 3 times. If they were to just close it directly from the application itself, we'll also detect that and start the installation automatically for them. So if I come back and look at that same log file, what I'll see is the Notepad++, I'll see the installation happening. It took a total of 1 second to complete that update. And if I come back and add or remove programs, I'll be able to see Notepad went from 791 to 792 using the software updates feature. All right, and then lastly on my ConfigMan client, I'm going to go ahead and kick off my actual application installation. So just since it's available, it would never automatically install, but I could come in and kind of kick that off. Now what we should hopefully see here is we'll see that installation kick off. And then back in my install logs, I think I enabled the installation logging for the 7-zip as well. We should probably see the 7-zip show up here in a second, where we can see the verbose MSI log from 7-zip as well. There we go. And then we can see that installation taking place, and it was exit code 0. So now I should, if I refresh, I should see 7-zip showing up now. And that was just a normal deployment via collection. So I could just go ahead and launch that. And any of the apps, or the vast majority of apps that we support, should also have the uninstall method defined in the deployment type. So you could even deploy these apps as an uninstall type if you wanted to get rid of specific apps as well. And we can see it's now gone. Cool. All right, awesome. So that's what the config manager side of things are going to look like. What I'll do before we jump into the reporting, I'll jump over and show you how the Intune functionality works as well. So if I open up Microsoft Intune, I can see that I currently have one application showing up here. So what I'm going to do is go over to my Intune Apps tab. So this is going to be the section of the same software that will allow you to publish both updates and apps to Intune. So we do have an option where we can bulk delete different applications. So I'm just going to go ahead and click my search here. And this will dynamically connect into your Intune tenant using Microsoft Graph. And you could select bulk actions on different applications in your tenant. So what I'm going to do is just delete that 7-zip application that was left over from another demo. And then if I were to refresh now, I can see that's now completely gone. So the functionality that we have for Intune really works the exact same way. So we have our apps, and then we have our updates, and you can just control which ones you want to enable. We do also have a scan feature in Intune as well, similar to ConfigMgr, where you can connect into your Intune tenant, and we can query the MSI-based applications that you have installed, and you can also enable that for products that we have. Now, in our lab, we only have Google Chrome, so it's not going to be populated all that often. But this would work the same way, where you could automatically enable products for Intune based on them being detected. And just can be helpful for that initial scan to see which products map up. We also have all the same right-click options. So let's say we wanted to get rid of shortcuts. Let's say that we wanted to disable self-updates, and we wanted to enable logging. So these are all customizations that can apply both for Intune updates and apps, just like we had for ConfigMgr. So for the applications for Intune, I'm going to enable 7-zip, just like I did for ConfigMan. And we also have some right-click options specific to Intune. So one of the things that we can do either at a specific application level is to assign it to different groups within Azure AD. Now, rather than doing this at the app level, We could also do this at the all products level. Let's say that you wanted all your applications to show as available. Rather than having to go into Intune after we create them, we could automatically create the assignments for you to either different groups within your Azure AD, or we could say we want to make it available for all licensed Intune users. So I'm just going to say I want it available for everybody. You do have some customizations, like once you select the group, we could control things like deadlines if it was required, as well as reboot behavior by just clicking the assignment. We could also choose whether or not we want to show notifications. These all correspond to the options available within the Intune assignment that we can automate for you. Okay. And then for the Intune updates, I'm going to just jump over here. Similar concept, you can choose which right-click options you may want to apply. So I'm just going to enable the same 3. And then I'm going to enable the Notepad++ update for my Intune update. So go ahead and right-click that. And then I want to add the option to manage the process. And I want to say I want to notify the user here. We can see the branding kind of copied over from what we previously did for our ConfigMan updates as well. Okay. And then what we'll also do is for all of our updates, let's say that we wanted to make them required so that they evaluate against all your Intune devices. I'm just going to say I want these updates to all be required, and then we'll see which ones are available based on the requirements and the detection that we have within those updates. If you wanted to, you could also create multiple different assignments for the updates as well. So let's say that you wanted to test it. Maybe for the first testing group, you would say, I want to install this right away. But then maybe you create another group for production, and you could stagger that group out for, let's say, 3 days from now. So you could try to catch any issues prior to it going out to all your machines. But for this example, I'm just going to say I want to deploy it right away. Okay. And then OK. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and enable debug logging just so we can see what happens when we connect into Intune a little more. And I'm just going to run a one-time synchronization again. Now this would of course automatically synchronize if you just use the schedule. But what we'll see here is we'll see it downloading the application from Intune, and then we'll actually see us connect to your Intune tenant and upload the content and create all the assignments for you. So good question. Is there any visual indicator of what right-click options are assigned to specific products? So today, what you would have to do to see that information, so if we went to Notepad for Intune updates, you would have to go through, right-click, and you could see it here. Now in the Advanced tab, we do have an option where you can export all the apps you've enabled and specifically what right-click options they've got on. So if I were to export this, it would export to a CSV file, and I put on my desktop. And then from this CSV file, I would be able to see all products that I have enabled, and then I would be able to see every single right-click column for which ones have been turned on. This would probably look better in like Excel, but this will be a quick way you could export everything at once and then get a good indicator of which customizations that you've applied. Cool. So if I look at the log, we'll be able to see like things happening. We could see the content uploading to Intune. We could see the assignments get created. So if I come into my Intune tenant and if I refresh my applications now, we'll see these are all created and deployed. Now let me go ahead and power up one of my Intune clients, and we'll see what this looks like in Company Portal when these updates and applications start to apply. All right, but while we're in the Intune console, if I were to go in and click on my 7-zip app, we'll see that we have all the same type of options that we had for our ConfigMan apps as well. So we can see things like the name, the description, we have keywords, version, icon, so the icon will automatically show up in Company Portal. And then lastly, if I look under my applications, I can see that we also have that available deployment that we did for all enrolled devices. If I look back at my apps, I can also see the update for 7-zip that has been created here as well. I can also see that's been assigned to all my devices as required. Now, the key difference between the updates and apps is that for our software updates, we create a requirement rule that says this application for the update for Notepad should only apply if Notepad is already installed and if it's less than the current update that we have. So this would only apply if Notepad's there and if it's less than version 7.9.2. That's why we were able to deploy this update to all devices, and we wouldn't have to worry about it actually installing or updating unless there's already an old version. So that's kind of what the core difference is between the Updates tab and the Intune Apps tab, is they're just going to function a little different, where we have a requirement for the update. But if we were to deploy the app for all users, that would be something that would always install, for example. Okay, so I've jumped over to one of my Intune clients. And in Company Portal, we can see, hopefully in the next minute or two, we'll be able to see this policy kick in. Sometimes it can be a little bit slow for the device to kind of sync up and get policy from Intune. So let me just try to log in once more, and we'll see if I can get that running a little faster. But while we're waiting for that to actually show up, what I'll do is I'll jump back to the server and I'll go over some of the reporting options that we have for Configuration Manager and Intune. So if you're using ConfigMgr and you're using the software updates feature, we do have some SSRS dashboards that you can upload from the Advanced tab of our tool. So you just come in here and choose to upload our dashboards. And this will allow you to report on both third-party updates as well as Microsoft updates directly using your ConfigMan reporting instance. So if I were to look at our main dashboard, this will show you compliance for both Microsoft updates as well as third-party updates within your environment. So for example, we'll see that within this lab, we have 4 workstations and we have 1 server within our environment. We then have compliance broken out by month. So for all our workstations, we can see we're 45% compliance for updates that were released in the month of September. We also have the same dashboard for servers, and then there's just a variety of overall compliance charts that can be quite helpful. So if I come in and look at my September updates, I can click that graph, and this will show me all the updates released in September, both third-party and Microsoft updates. So for example, that Mozilla Thunderbird update that we saw got released yesterday via that RSS feed, we can see it's required on 4 machines in this environment. If I were to click on that, depending on how deep you drill in, we might take you into some of the native Configuration Manager reports where you can get very specific. So for example, I could go look at what 4 machines require that specific update, for example. In addition to that main dashboard, we also have one that only shows third-party updates. Same exact report, but it filters down to only third-party. There's some where you can limit to a specific update group. So just a variety of different dashboards. We do also have some Power BI dashboards available. So if you are using Power BI, if you go to our website, you can download some of the Power BI compliance dashboards created from our team, and you'll be able to use those as well. So if I come in and search for Power BI, you should be able to see both the Power BI dashboards that we've created for Microsoft Intune, as well as the ones that we have for ConfigMgr. Let's see if I can find that. Interesting. There we go. All right, so this is an example of the reporting dashboard we have for our Intune Power BI dashboard. So you can see both updates and applications, and you can see, what their installation status is. Now we are limited to what data Microsoft Graph and Intune has. So you'll be able to see some basic statistics like how many machines have this update required and how many of them have it installed. But it's not going to be quite as rich as some of the Config Manager options with how rich the data is there, for example. And then let's take a look. And here's an example of the Power BI dashboard we have for Configuration Manager as well. So I'll include the links here and you can check out these dashboards too. These are actually available for download even if you're not a customer of ours, where you can use both the Power BI or SSRS dashboards for compliance reporting. Okay, so jumping back to my Intune client, I can see that we actually have the update for Notepad showing up here as well. So if I look at that, I can see that we've already got a couple minutes that have passed on our timeline. So I can currently see that I have Notepad++ 7.91. So it's currently open, and this would function the same way that my client did in ConfigMgr. So if I were to close it, we'll be able to see that update automatically kick off. And if we were to look at the log files, we would see all the customizations applying here as well for that update. Cool. There we go. We could see the shortcut just got deleted. And if I open Notepad back up, we'll be able to see that that's now up to date. And then if I click on my refresh, we can see that we went to 7.9.2. Now it looks like the available assignment isn't quite showing up. So that's probably just some delay on the Intune policy. So I'll just skip that for demonstration purposes. And then at this point, I'll just follow up with kind of the wrap up, which will be kind of the pricing our product offers. And then we'll open up for any Q&A. So if you were interested, this looked like it might be a good fit for you, the trial would probably be the best place to start. And then from a pricing perspective, what I demoed today, which would include both the apps and updates for ConfigMgr and Intune, would be our subscription that costs $3.50 per year per device. So just for a rough kind of idea of what pricing would look like, just be aware that if you would fall under our min pricing, which would be for the Enterprise Plus, basically $2,500 per year. Just be aware that would be the starting point if you fall under the devices that would equal that. We then have our Intune subscription. That would be if you're cloud only, it's $2.50 per year per device. And then the Enterprise one, which most of our customers aren't on at this point, that would only include the software updates feature of our tool. So that would allow you to update your existing apps that are already out there, but it wouldn't include the ability to create and package our brand new applications over in the applications node. So that's kind of an overview of what the pricing structure would look like. And then at this point, I would just open up for any questions. So if anyone wants to come off unmute. So there's a good question in the chat. So is licensing based on the total clients in the environment or only ones using Patch My PC? So if we look under our FAQ page, I'll also include this in the chat window as well. We're pretty flexible as far as what does a device mean. So for example, in this section, let's say that you have non-Windows devices, right? So that's going to be something we wouldn't support because we're only Windows. So Mac, Linux, or maybe you wanted to exclude specific machines that would never get third-party updates, maybe servers you don't want to patch in your environment. That's totally fine. Basically, when you go through and tell us, you list the number of devices that you intend to use our third-party updates or applications on. Is third-party patching only available through SCCM? Question from Nick. No. So if you're using standalone WSUS, we have an option in our updates menu where you can enable the standalone WSUS mode. So this would allow you to publish into a non-ConfigMgr environment that you have WSUS in, or of course, if you're in Intune, you could use the updates functionality within our Win32 apps to deploy updates using that mechanism as well. If you did want to connect, just another question here, probably the best way is going to be you can schedule a live demo. So if you wanted to see maybe a bit more or you wanted to get more details about the product from a technical perspective, you could do a live demo. So this would be an hour-long session where you can ask questions about our product. We could walk you through a demo similar to what we did here. If you have questions kind of related to pricing, you could go right to a request a quote form, and then you could get pricing that's kind of official. You know, we do include pretty upfront pricing here, but if you just wanted for budgeting purposes, you could contact our team by doing a quote. Or if it's something more that's just generic, you just have a question for us, you could use the contact us form. And then lastly, if you are a customer or you're in a trial and you need support, you would be able to open a support case using this open support form. So that's kind of the main ways that you could reach out. Or if you just wanted to email directly, support could be support@patchmypc. Or if it's a sales question, you could email directly for sales@patchmypc.com. Okay. Cool. Does anyone want to come off unmute to maybe ask a question? I see we're getting quite a few in the chat. If anyone wanted to unmute, feel free, and we could take some over voice as well.
Let me use this opportunity. So actually, we are using PCP since a long time for one of our customers. So we are facing some recent issues that it is not getting synchronized for all the recent third-party updates. So we are only managing the third-party updates from PCP. So we are facing some sync issues. So I got some answers from here saying that we can connect to this log that is called patchmypc.log. So is it going to reside on the same server where we have installed this PCP?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're using our product, PatchMyPC, yep, it would be where you have our publisher installed. That's right. Now, are you using PatchMyPC or are you using a different product?
Yeah, we are using PatchMyPC itself.
Cool, yeah, so wherever you have our publisher installed, that would be where you could go and open the log file. Now, the only exception to that would be if you're publishing our catalog directly using the third-party software updates catalog node, there is the possibility that, if you are using this instead of our tool, we find that about 95% of our customers use our publisher tool, which I'm showing here. But it is possible that you could add our catalog directly here. You just wouldn't get the customizations. Where it would not be the patchmypc.log, it would be a built-in SCCM log. But probably for your specific question, it sounds like it's more support related. What I would recommend, just reaching out to support@patchmypc.com or opening a case here, and then one of the support engineers, probably someone that's actually monitoring the chat, would be able to go in and we could set up a remote support session and make sure that we get you going for whatever issue that you're having for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for your help.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you wanted to, you could also, like if you're having a problem kind of finding that log file, if you go to our docs.patchmypc.com, we do have this log reference guide. I'm going to go ahead and include this in the chat window. And this will include all the different logs. So here's where you could kind of understand the main log that we have for publishing. It would be wherever that installation directory is. So this may help as well. But yeah, I definitely recommend a support case. We'll be able to get you going in no time.
Thank you so much for all this information. I think we'll be able to resolve it. I was looking for it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. Any other questions?
Not really a question, but I wanted to mention that PatchMyPC really saved us a buttload of time when our SCCM environment kind of self-destructed and we had to rebuild from scratch because apparently our backups were no good. It was able to look at our environment once clients started coming back in and say, oh, look, you've got these 500 apps installed. Do you want to auto create the apps for us and get the updates rolling again? And that just got us back up on our feet a lot quicker than it would have and saved us a lot of pain and suffering and bad times. And so that at being a current PMP customer, I really appreciated that fact.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super glad to hear that things are going great for you. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I'll turn it over to Frank. Now, our team will be on the chat window, and we are doing an MMS Miami raffle. We'll do that after Cody and Andrew's deep dive session for WSUS.